I have watched all Pixar movies, and I am going to rank all 27 villains from worst to best. I anticipate that many people will disagree with me, so feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below.
Disappointment in the game of life!
Miles Axelrod is a manipulative leader who aimed to turn the entire world against alternative fuels and profit from it. At first glance, Axelrod presented himself as friendly and well-meaning towards other cars, inventing Alanol to promote the use of alternative fuel. However, it later became evident that Axelrod is a ruthless, greedy, deceptive, and manipulative criminal mastermind. He desired the respect of non-lemons and was willing to harm other cars, even committing murder to achieve his goal. Somehow, Mater emerges as the smartest car in the movie, highlighting the foolishness of the villain's plan. The laziness in the plot and lack of any enjoyable humor at any moment is perfectly represented in Axelrod, a facsimile of the type of villain that's been portrayed in far superior films than this one. He's revealed to be the villain the moment he's defeated and gets zero time to be evil.
Now what?
Darla is the 8-year-old niece of Philip Sherman, a dentist. Although she is not truly evil and thus not a villain, she is rather rambunctious, immature, and often becomes overexcited when she receives pet fish, which ironically has frequently resulted in her accidentally killing them in her excitement. She appears to be much more innocent and seemingly did not mean Chuckles and Nemo any real harm, and apparently genuinely caring for Nemo, evidenced by her calling out to Nemo when he went down the drain. The Cursed Dragon is a powerful and dangerous curse taking the form of a dragon, constructed from debris it gathers, guarding the Phoenix Gem against anyone attempting to steal it. It serves as a mindless monster obstacle for the main character, offering a formidable challenge in their quest. Despite being a mindless creature, it engages in a significant battle against the main character. When their father died, 4 Scottish princes were given an equal share of his kingdom. His eldest thought this was cheating on his birthright and fought with his brothers. He cheated and used magic. He won, but paid dearly for it by transforming into an immortal and feral black bear called Mordu. His violence was uncontrollable and prominent enough for even a young teenager to fall victim to his murderous intention, and everyone in Scotland knew and feared him. I do like Mordu because he's genuinely just a demon bear. He just wants to kill. Thunderclap is a deranged, wise-cracking beast that leads a pack of fellow storm-chasing pterodactyls in their quest to try and eat Arlo the dinosaur's human companion, Spot. They make a grand entrance from the sky, reminiscent of sharks. That's really it, honestly, which leads to Thunderclap's low position on this list. A character so forgettable partly because of his lack of any real powerful motivation within the world of the good dinosaur. Outside of a few deranged, inspired line readings here and there, Thunderclap leaves little to no impression in an already forgettable entry in the Pixar canon.
Buzz Lightyear to Star Command. Come in, Star Command.
Is a galactic warlord who seizes control of the planet Takani Prime with his army of Cyclops, aiming to acquire the remaining hyperspace fuel of Star Command. Unfortunately, Lightyear's Zerg becomes the latest Pixar villain to follow the twist villain cliché. Towards the end of the movie, it's revealed that Zerg isn't a robot or an alien being, but an older version of Buzz Lightyear from an alternate timeline who traveled back in time to prevent his crew's action. Thanks to being a twist villain, there isn't enough time spent with him to fully flesh him out, and what is done with him ends up complicating his character through confusing time travel elements and undermining his villainy by poorly explaining why he's in the wrong. But old Buzz at least had a decent plan in order to advance technology. He was willing to do whatever it took in order to obtain his goal, even destroying the past and erasing the lives of people that young Buzz knew, so for that he's listed at this spot.
The screen Slater interrupts this program for an important announcement.
She is the sister of Winston Dever, the former co-CEO of DevTech, and Elastigirl's former friend turned arch-nemesis. She is bent on destroying the reputation of supers and preventing them from becoming legal again. However, her master plan never really made sense in the first place, and her ideology isn't well executed.
Or old.
Storm is a rookie belonging to the new generation of high-tech racers, and is the third rival of Lightning McQueen, being the first rival in the franchise for Cruz Ramirez. He is basically Chick Hicks. Admittedly, Storm is pretty mild as villains go. For much of the film, he's simply Lightning's more potent successor, not outright bad, just arrogant and having little time for the prior generations that preceded him. The only villainous act he committed was pushing Cruz into the outer wall, although he indirectly caused McQueen's crash. Other than that, he was just an obstacle, not trying to antagonize McQueen, and he had no backstory. He is definitely one of the weakest villains in Pixar movies.
I can't let you throw yourself away.
Gabby, an old-fashioned doll with a broken voice box, simply wants to be played with. She knows that Woody's voice box is the only thing standing in her way of finally being chosen from the shelf at the antique store. While she did do some pretty horrible things, such as attempting to take Woody's voice box for hers to work again, at the end of the day, she is just a broken toy, physically and mentally, yearning to be loved.
All of the monsters!
Worthington was the head of Roar Omega Roar and was a jerk to both Mike and Sully. He's essentially the typical annoying fraternity bro you'd see in any college movie, but he was also willing to play dirty to get what he wanted in the scare games. He at least earns a higher spot for that. He is an Italian teenager and local bully and show-off in the town of Porto Rosso, but as the film progresses, he shows that he's much more vile than that. Urky may not be trying to take over the world or anything, but he's a completely refreshing antagonist in that there's no tragic backstory or exterior reason for his awful behavior. He wants to win, thinks everyone loves him, and will put down anyone who challenges him on anything. His bullying goes straight into sadism, as he is willing to kill Luca and Alberto when he finds out they are sea monsters, despite them showing themselves to be harmless and sentient beings. This reveals the sociopathic side of Urky.
I'd like to thank everyone in Cartown for helping me get all the things I needed.
As Lightning rests and recovers in the small town of Radiator Springs, it's Hicks' jerkish nature that constantly motivates McQueen to take him on in the film's final race centerpiece. To give Keaton the credit he most definitely deserves, he certainly gives his all here as the arrogant race car whose only glory can be found in a racing trophy. He's pretty much the worst a car could get, blatantly running people off the track and forcing cars to crash. Though Chick Hicks still occupies a simple, archetypal antagonistic role against Lightning McQueen, he comes equipped with a memorable design. That green paint job with the mustache is priceless, and a quippy enough performance from Keaton to make his presence as enjoyable as it can be within the trappings of a film about talking cars.
I'm officially a college student!
She is the dean of the School of Scaring at Monsters University. To Dean Hardscrabble, there are scary monsters, and then there are all other monsters. Despite her harsh exterior, the climax of the film depicts Hardscrabble as capable of a certain degree of sympathy. She is proud of them when they work their way up to scarers in a Monsters, Inc. I appreciate the multifaceted construction of the villain in this manner.
This is Al from Al's Toy Barn.
He is the greedy owner of Al's Toy Barn and an avid toy collector who steals Woody in hopes of selling him and the Woody's Roundup gang to Tokyo for money. Andy's mom states that she doesn't know how Woody got in the box of toys because Andy wouldn't have wanted to sell Woody, as Woody is his favorite toy. However, Al sneaks away with Woody anyway when she isn't looking. All Al cared about was money and his toy collection, making him a villain and antagonist dressed in a chicken outfit.
Behold the Underminer!
The Underminer is some form of mole man living beneath the city streets of Metroville. He provides the perfect cap to the first Incredibles film, setting up yet another villain for our superhero family to face off against together. His cliched monologuing about re-emerging from the depths of the city to take his revenge is right out of the classic villain textbook, and Ratzenberger provides him with enough humorous gravitas to turn him into a memorable minor bad guy.
You got Steven.
Sid, an extremely creative child who expresses himself through highly imaginative, Frankenstein-esque toy operations, is often perceived as a terrible, evil person. He wears shirts with skulls on them and rides a skateboard, leading people to believe that Sid is a monstrous young adult who's not to be trusted. Leaving aside the fact that Sid has no idea about the impact he's having on these assumed to be inanimate objects until they rise from the ground to traumatize him, Sid is the complete opposite of the charming, playful, all-around joyful Andy from across the way. Despite not being a true villain himself, and not recognizing that toys were alive and could talk, he still engages in quite violent behavior, torturing them by blowing them up with explosives like dynamite, fireworks, rockets, and tearing them apart. He's a musician who captures the hearts and minds of both the living and the dead, serving as the primary inspiration behind Miguel's guitar-playing ambitions. However, it's only when our protagonist unexpectedly journeys to the land of the dead that he discovers De La Cruz's whole act has been built on a web of lies. Ernesto murdered his songwriting partner and took credit for his musical prowess. Miguel's hero transforms into Miguel's villain, and De La Cruz, sinking to the bottom of cruel villainy, rises to become one of Pixar's best villains. Ernesto de la Cruz embodies greed, even in death. Not only did he steal the songs of his best friend and pass them off as his own, but he also poisoned him so he'd never get caught. He was only exposed in the afterlife, making him a true villain, and one of the few villains with a Disney Pixar twist that truly worked.
That's
Wonderful.
Chef Skinner is the snobbish commercial head chef currently running the late Gusto's restaurant, terribly mind you, and he stands as the only person in the way of Linguini taking over as the rightful blood heir of Gusto's legacy. With Skinner's sights set on using the Gusto name to brand a collection of frozen meals, his love of food has turned to, well, absolute trash, and no long-lost relative of Gusto, or bipedal rodent, is going to get in the way of that. Luckily for us, a certain rat chef is just a tad too cunning for Skinner to carry out his nefarious anti-culinary schemes. Skinner still provides enough memorable menace and conflict to leave a mark in this stunning picture. Skinner is a fun take on a greedy chef who still has some passion for his craft. He takes his job in the restaurant seriously and even defends Gusto's image, though admittedly, it's for marketing. Holm does a wonderful job, particularly when Skinner becomes frustrated and paranoid trying to expose and capture Remy.
3, 2, 1.
The film positions Otto, the Starship Axiom's autopilot software, as the antagonist whose programming instructs it to stay the course and not let anything get in its way, not even the chance to try and save Earth. He is a good obstacle for the heroes. He just follows orders. However, why doesn't he have motivation? Why can't he formulate his own opinion about Earth or humanity? When conflicts appear, he doesn't explain why he thinks they are beyond salvaging. He tells us how he is the own character than that he has been told. Otto is certainly a fine means of creating conflict in the final act of the film, and his sole red eye, a fun 2001, a Space Odyssey homage to HAL 9000, creates a pretty cheeky sci-fi Easter egg. However, when it comes to ranking Pixar villains, this machine is best seen as more of a plot device than a fully fleshed out character.
Oh shit! Alright!
Anton Ego, the skeletal food critic, positioned as the one to bring ultimate doom to Chef Gusteau and his restaurant in Ratatouille, sends fear and menace through the likes of everyone who crosses his path. This includes Chef Gusteau himself, who dies in the wake of a vicious negative review from Ego. However, when Ego tastes the food cooked by the film's rodent protagonist, Remy, his attitude changes, leading to a glowing review for Gusteau's restaurant. This moment represents one of the most elegant and beautiful odes to the art of criticism ever seen in cinema history. The film's message is clear. Anyone can cook, and as Anton Ego shows, anyone can turn their villainy into pure heroism by a story's end.
Balloony started floating away. I tried to reach out and grab him, but
Muns is one of the world's greatest explorers who went missing on the search for an elusive creature deep in the jungles of South America. It's only when Carl and his new pal, Russell, happen upon this creature, the colorful bird known as Kevin, that Munz's kindness turns to menace, and Carl's greatest inspiration quickly turns into his greatest threat. Obsession is a powerful theme in Up. Munz's dark and twisted obsession leads him down a dangerous path with a legion of talking dogs, and it's also what ultimately leads to his downfall. A classic villain in a classic performance, Muns is the perfect villainous foil for this daring and emotional adventure. Previously the globe-trotting hero of Carl and Ellie, Muns has turned to obsession in an attempt to reclaim his lost glory. At the peak of his career, Muns found the bones of a brand new species of bird in South America. However, scientists claimed the skeleton to be fake and publicly disgraced him. Muns returned to Paradise Falls to try and find a living member of the species to clear his name. However, he has become single-minded in pursuit of this goal. It's implied he's already killed other explorers he believed were trying to muscle in on his discovery and shot at both Carl and Russell, not to mention all the dogs he sent into the labyrinth, searching for the bird, that never came out again.
That thing back where it came from, oh, so help me.
The terrifyingly slimy, scaly monster is designed to terrify adults and children alike, with his chameleonic abilities providing him the means to both sneak and scare to his delight. While we learn later in the film how he's not the only villain to be found in the hallways of Monsters Incorporated, Randall is most certainly the most memorable of the bunch when it comes down to it. And his competitive nature and general creepiness are both huge parts of that. Randall Boggs has dreamed of taking him down. This jealousy is fanned further when they both get jobs at Monsters Inc., and Sully becomes the #1 scarer. Thus, Randall develops a groundbreaking machine to forcefully extract screams from human children, making scarers like Sully obsolete. Lotso is positioned as the kindly caretaker of the Sunnyside Daycare collection of toys, only to be revealed as a cruel and dictatorial ruler, making his fellow toys suffer so that he can remain in power. As his backstory reveals, originally owned by a child named Daisy, he was lost and replaced and eventually found himself at Sunnyside. There, he was able to build a comfortable life for himself, all the while believing that children were evil and toys were worth nothing. When Woody and his friends rebel against Lotso's rules and try to escape, Lotso attempts to throw them into the dumpster to get rid of them. This leads to all of them, Lotso included, getting taken to the dump. He manages to escape from the conveyor belt leading to the incinerator and had the chance to save the other toys. Instead, he chose to sit back and watch his challengers burn. Even if his routine is something of a new spin on the familiar villainous arc of Toy Story 2's previous villain, Stinky Pete, Lotso is still a wonderfully designed, instantly memorable character that brings an air of cuddly menace to the Toy Story universe.
Are there other bugs in your life?
No.
Hopper is a textbook dictator. Every year, he demands a massive tribute of grain from the ants to see his gang through the winter in luxury. In fact, he frequently demands so much grain that the ants barely have enough food for themselves. Beneath a lonely tree in A Bug's Life, a colony of ants slaves away, collecting enough food for themselves and the grasshoppers that rule them. Their leader, Hopper, does everything he can to make the ants feel weak and helpless. Normally, he does this through harsh implications, but he won't hesitate to murder if he must. Hopper is a clear-cut analog to a capitalistic despot who depends on his subjects working themselves to the bone to give up most of the fruits of their labor despite doing no work themselves. The only thing he protects the ants from is himself, as seen when he threatens to crush the queen. He's also ruthless enough to kill his own gang members to keep control of his people. He goes to such extreme lengths because he knows that the ants are too numerous to stand against if they join together, and is finally defeated when the ants rise up against him. The end he got was fitting, considering what he did.
No, officer, I swear.
In the central conflict of the film, will Woody go to Japan to be displayed in a museum? Stinky Pete represents the opposing dyad to Woody's playful past. He's a toy who's never been played with, and he'd rather keep it that way. After all, he's been constantly rejected by society, so if he can't be played with, well, no one can. A complex character plagued by his own insecurities who meets his tragic and ironic end as a playmate for a young girl at an airport, this prospector is easily one of Pixar's most memorable evildoers. He spent years alone in his box on a store shelf, passed over by children looking for more popular dolls or space toys. His isolation warped his mind, and now he believes that children only destroy toys or otherwise forget and abandon them. His goal is to spend the rest of his life in mint condition in a museum. Of course, the museum's only interested in taking the whole set of Woody's Roundup toys. It doesn't matter to Pete that Woody and Jessie don't want to spend the rest of their days behind glass. He's willing to literally tear Woody to pieces to keep him from escaping with his friends. Pete's situation is rooted in real-life toy sales, as sidekick toys don't usually sell as well as other characters. To mask his selfish intentions, he acts as a mentor to Woody and Jesse, though always with the nefarious intention of having them cooperate with his plan. Grammer sells both sides of Pete, the kind grandfather and the rage-filled monster, giving the character a rich complexity that makes Toy Story 2 such a great entry in the series.
I'll kidnap 1,000 children before I let this company die.
In fear of the scare shortage plaguing Monstropolis, Noose turns to nefarious means to potentially murder children in order to provide enough screams to fix their energy crisis. Luckily, Sully and Mike work together to take down their frightening boss. Noose only cares about the success of his corporation and is more than willing to use Randall's scream extractor to harvest children's screams more efficiently, regardless of the consequences. His memorable line, "I'll kidnap 1,000 children before I let this company die," is caught on tape and played back to all the monsters, leading to his arrest. With enough paternal energy to convince you of his saintliness, but with a creepy, bug-like design that becomes more menacing as the film progresses. Noose is a classic example of a villain who thinks he's doing what's right, leaving a memorably terrifying mark in a film already filled with too many memorable moments. Noose succeeds because he is a villain audiences can, to an extent, empathize with. He doesn't want to hurt Sully and Mike, especially since he views the former as a protege. But he is determined to prevent the collapse of the monster world. Coburn perfectly captures this struggle in his voice, able to play Noose as an encouraging boss and a desperate man. Syndrome was just a mild-mannered superhero, obsessive, rejected by his all-time idol, Mr. Incredible. That rejection hit him right in his core, leading him down a tech-obsessed path towards outright maniacal villainy and turning him into the red-headed, hyper-villainous, super-killing Syndrome that commands both the Incredibles and this very list. He spent much of his adult life luring superheroes to his island and murdering them using his Omnidroid. Syndrome is credited with at least 15 superhero deaths, and the dark tone of the movie earned it Pixar's first PG rating. All his hatred and bitterness stemmed from a childhood encounter with his idol Mr. Incredible, who crushed his dreams of being a sidekick by telling him he wasn't special. He then decided to eradicate all the so-called special people, or supers, using technology to make up for his lack of powers. What makes Syndrome stand out is how far he's willing to go to prove his superiority. His plan spans generations, with the end game being giving his technology to others, making everyone on par with superheroes. Like all the best villains fueled by pride, it eventually leads to his downfall by blinding him to the obvious dangers in his costume. Syndrome represents a complex figure within the world of the Incredibles. He's an ordinary citizen trying to stand up against the supers who rejected him, but he's using unjustifiably monstrous means to get his justice. A perfect villain is usually the one who thinks they're the real hero of the story, and that can certainly be said for Syndrome, as classic a villain as they come in the Pixar universe or any other cinematic universe for that matter. He's hilarious. You can't not like Syndrome as a villain. He had a goal, and I think he was the closest Pixar villain to achieving his goal. If it wasn't for his cape, he probably could have kidnapped Jack eventually. Pixar did a really good job of developing his character.